Hey folks, I want to talk about a topic today that is pretty hot in many respects, the issue of campus commencement speakers. And let me give you a personal flavor for this. I don't go to campus commencements. I did go to my sister's. She had two for her 2 degrees, which, you know, I could have done without going. I didn't really care. I mean, I'm happy for her, but I think that campus commencement and, you know, cap and gown stuff is bullshit. I graduated personally with 2 degrees in 2014 and 2016 in mechanical engineering, and I didn't go to either ceremony. I didn't go to my high school commencement ceremony. I actually went to work at a pizza shop. I really don't care. And personally, I think for many people this is an important day. I've never really gotten it. So you could ask, why would I care about this? I think that one of the real problems that we're seeing is that students are now being used as a target demographic for people looking to build their future views. And this is mostly because the college lifestyle is where people often get their new political views, their new viewpoints on the world. And it's probably, you know, the best way for educators to come and indoctrinate them, basically, and bring them into their sphere of beliefs when they're not around their parents and their surrounding community. And excuse me, I'm sorry if I keep coughing. That's the way it is in all videos. Look, one of the problems is that the United States has fostered a free speech atmosphere that is it became so free at a certain point that there are certain ways of expressing oneself that developed in areas where you simply wouldn't think that they would. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have people with radical viewpoints, you know, people that believe in, because after all, that's how the civil rights era became as successful as it was. A lot of the people that supported it were educated college students. They were the ones who spread the support for it and did a lot of the activism for registering the vote and whatever. I understand that people in the college atmosphere should have the right to express themselves, even if it's views that I think are completely loopy and irrational. But it's gone to the other extreme. There are a lot of colleges that, for one thing, they're supposed to be sectarian. For example, Xavier and you know, Fordham. I mean, Catholic schools, Georgetown, Boston College. You could talk about SMU, Southern Methodist University. There's a lot of universities with Christian charters and you know, that are technically religious schools that have basically rendered their religious affiliation into something that's just like a badge that doesn't really mean anything anymore. Gonzaga, for example, hired that teacher Melissa Crick, the one that kicked an Asian American reporter out of the Mizzou protests. That was last year. They hired her. This is clearly somebody who doesn't respect the viewpoints of students, who thinks that her views are the ones that are welcome on a college campus, but people who don't agree with her are a threat to her own freedoms. Okay? And that's not the way it's supposed to work. You know, every place that I've had, you know, the benefit of being educated, even if I didn't like the school, the best teachers were the ones who could go punch for punch with the student, figuratively, I'm saying, in terms of debating a point and whatever. It's one of the reasons that they would often get the best return out of a student assignment. And the ones that would impose their views, and I've had a couple of those, not that many, those are the ones that I've basically seen are the ones that led me to not have any. I never really saw formal education as something that I aspire to. In fact, it took me until later, after my military service, to actually engage to actually go back to college. But okay, so let's put a focus on it. All of the stuff that has happened with these crazy college campuses, you know, the Berkeley shit, and what happened in Missouri, which was, to me, that was a disgrace what they did to the university administration. There have been similar issues at universities across the country, at Georgetown and Yale. I think the guy's name was Nicholas Christakis, this professor that working at Yale, that he was bullied into leaving Yale by a bunch of basically wimps that they all gathered together, and they bullied him over a Halloween costume mailer that his wife had circulated, who's also a faculty member. But all of this stuff, you know, not to diminish their problem, which I can understand, even though I've never wanted to work at a university. I think it's one of the most ridiculous places to work, especially nowadays. And in the past too, there was another problem where academics had too much power. And nowadays they also have, to a certain degree, too much power if they have crazy liberal views. But what I'm going to focus on today is that, you know, anti-Israel or anti-Jewish activism was the precursor to this. They are the canary in the coal mine. I made a video a few weeks ago, a short video talking about why Israel Apartheid Week is bullshit. I don't care if you're going to call me a Zionist and everything like that, because, to be honest with you, that term means nothing to me. I don't see it as a political philosophy, because, you know, I define myself according to fiscal policy more so than nationalism. You know, and I could give a fuck like what your view is on that. You know, if you're an anti-Zionist, for example, how about you explain your views? How about you explain to me why I should care about your views concerning the country where most of my family lived and still lives, most of them, and the country where we were given, you know, shelter after being kicked out of 2 different continents. Okay, if you want to expound on your views, I'm fine with listening to them, and I've actually read a lot about it, so I'm perfectly fine listening to you. But if you're going to condemn me as a Zionist, I can tell you I don't really care what you think, because I don't see it as a political philosophy. I've believed my entire life that the fact that you believe that the Jewish people should have a home and have a sanctuary from hatred in the world, I don't see that as a real problem. And believe me, I didn't have the best experience living in Israel. In fact, I think that, to me, it's been sort of a topsy-turvy relationship with Zionist political philosophy. I have a lot of friends. I've come to accept that a lot of these right-wing Zionists simply aren't the problem that I used to think that they are, and that, frankly, I think their views are, in some ways, they've been vindicated, okay? But what we're talking about is campus threats. And there's an issue here where, you know, you have this Israeli apartheid organization, Israel Apartheid Week they call themselves, and BDS movement, and Students for Justice in Palestine. Those are the 3 different incarnations of the same movement. And all they are doing is focusing with a laser-like concentration on the deeds of one country. Okay, there's no movement of comparable fanaticism that targets the People's Republic of China for its oppression of Tibet, or that targets Cuba, or that targets, yeah, you could go with Iraq for how they put down the Kurds, or you could talk about 4 different countries that put down the Kurds. You could talk about Darfur, which was kind of a hashtag movement. It never really caught on, and today the Darfur freedom movement is a memory. Nobody really cares about that, even though the issues they're still ongoing over there. But the Students for Justice in Palestine and all of their various incarnations are a very simple front group. What they really are these people, these liberal fruitcakes of all different persuasions. You have Arab Americans, you have other Muslim Americans, you have Jewish Americans, you have blacks, you have Hispanics, and you know, they're allied groups, and SJP has been allied with Black Lives Matter in the past, which the connection between them is based on the most flimsy ties that sometimes I wonder exactly who's organizing this. These groups will never, ever give up their cause, because their cause is tied to hatred of the Jews, hatred of Israel, hatred of the people themselves. They don't have any progressive goals in reality, because if they did, they would actually have an agenda for how this would come about that did not involve turning a country into a blockaded pariah state. Nobody does that for any of the other numerous disgusting countries in the world where the regime basically puts down the people and starves them to death, like in Zimbabwe in the past, Venezuela or whatever. I already mentioned China. Okay, they don't care. They don't care about human rights. Human rights to them is a crowbar. It's a tool for them to get the means that they want. So let's hear an example of what I'm talking about from this student. This is at New York University in Greenwich Village. That's in New York City, if you don't know. And he's from Students for Justice in Palestine. This happened recently, May 6th.
Please, and that we are displeased. That's not both banned. NYU left scouting my email inbox for things, so I thought I would return the favor. His email address is andrew.hamilton@nyu.edu. And in the title, I want you to caption it, "Here We Will Stay." From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. With lack of response from Israeli forces and from the Israeli government, prisoners for the Palestinian hunger strike are entering a coma state. We see that these are reaching extreme standards and extreme states for a lot of these prisoners. In solidarity with our brothers and sisters overseas, please keep them in your prayers, keep them in your thoughts. And again, if you do post, please use the hashtag #DignityStrike. And please do not forget us for next semester, because next semester comes serious change. Thank you.
Okay, so you saw that this was an activist, if you want to call him that, from NYU. And NYU, just so you know, is one of the most Jewish-heavy campuses in the country, okay? Here, I'm going to bring it in. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, so it doesn't give any figures, but NYU is the largest private university by Jewish population. Okay, and why is this a problem? Okay, you could say, oh, they're not really protesting against Jews. They're protesting against Israel. Okay, but what he stated in that chant was, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What this really means is that they don't believe in a peaceful settlement in the Middle East. So they're already taking a stance that in the 1970s was called the rejectionist stance, which is that there will never be a negotiation or a compromise with the Israelis or with with any country. Palestine must be liberated to the final inch of earth, and that the Jews have no right to live on that land. And you know, to me, I think that people miss the point. People always focus on the nationalist and the issue in this. They don't focus on the religious element here. That in order for there to have been, to begin with, presence by the people that lived in the geographic limits of what's called Palestine. In order for them to have believed in Christianity or Islam, you have to actually read their books. And in both the Quran and in the New Testament, which is the Christian Bible, which some Palestinians are Christians of all different faiths. There's Orthodox and there's Catholic and whatnot. In both of them, they mention the birthright coming from the Israelites. The Israelites were a people that lived in that area from roughly the time of Abraham till the Roman conquest of Jerusalem. And then afterward, they lived there in smaller populations. Most of them were exiled. So what they really mean here is that they don't believe that these Jews have a birthright in their own country. Okay, and what this also means is that these people believe in ethnic cleansing. If you want to talk about in America today, the big debate over illegal immigration. So these people are basically saying, no, we don't want any new people coming into this country. Okay, they're saying that the influx of Jews in the early 20th century into Palestine was colonization, and it was made in order to dilute the quality and quantity of the Arab population in British Mandate Palestine and the Ottoman province of Syria, because Palestine had not even been a province under the Ottoman Empire. Their basic claim is that they don't want strange people coming to their neighborhood. They want to keep it completely authentic and free. That's a ridiculous idea. That's something that nowadays you have many of them are emigrating of choice to the West. So then why should we want them here? Okay, I think that a compromise position could be reached if there's professional people that want to come to the United States and build their lives here. I don't care if they're Pakistani or Yemeni or even Sudanese, whatever it is, Palestinian, let's say. I have no problem with them coming here, but my problem is that we have people coming in that don't have any professional skills. So I base my immigration policy on the quality of the professional talent coming in. Okay, and that's personally my preference. Everything else is a bunch of bullshit. Okay, everybody talking about our moral imperative to help people come here. Excuse me, but it's not written anywhere. It's not a requirement made by our Constitution, and I don't really see why we have to keep going by that myth. Okay, so let's talk about commencement speakers. Okay, last week you probably found out a few different incidents happened. I think John Cornyn was supposed to speak at the University of or Texas A&M University. I'm not sure which one, but he was eventually, due to protests, he canceled his appearance. More famously, Betsey DeVos went and spoke at Bethune-Cookman University and was booed loudly by a section of the students. I don't know how many of them they were, but it was loud enough that it was pretty noticeable. And a lot of people came out and they said, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay. They're just expressing themselves. They're just expressing themselves because Linda, first of all, they were saying that, not Linda, but Betsey DeVos, they were trying to say that she's an idiot and she doesn't deserve to be speaking at the college. They were claiming, for example, that I saw one person arguing on a comment thread that I saw on somebody else's wall. They're arguing that, well, she was wearing a doctorate gown and she doesn't have a doctorate. That's a disgrace. People shouldn't get to wear a PhD gown if they don't have a PhD. Well, I actually found that Charlie Day, who's a comedian that I really like, or he's a TV creator. I don't know if he does stand-up too, but Charlie Day spoke at Merrimack College a few years back, and he got an honorary doctorate. And Merrimack College doesn't even offer PhDs. So to me, that's kind of ridiculous. There is no argument there. The college decided to invite her, and the students made a stink out of it. Many of the people who made a stink out of it don't even go to Bethune-Cookman. And from now on, the reputation of Bethune-Cookman will be tainted by this incident. And you know, you could blame the administrators who invited them, but you also have to blame the people that made a spectacle out of themselves. The next year, they're going to get the Missouri treatment. I think that there's going to be some donors that are going to simply not contribute as much. It remains to be seen, but that's what happened with Missouri. That's what happened with the enrollment at Missouri, by the way. And meanwhile, the college that went and marched at the Trump inauguration ceremony, Talladega College, in I think they're in South Carolina or Alabama. Yeah, they're in Alabama. They've actually gotten an economic boost from it. And a lot of these colleges, all I'm saying is you can't go and claim, on the one hand, that I almost said Linda DeVos again, Betsey DeVos. I don't think that you can claim that she can't speak on a college campus while this weirdo, this Linda Sarsour, is is fully allowed to go anywhere she wants. She's going to speak at the City University of New York. Okay? And let's go back to that list, okay? Hold on. So if you look at Jewish students at CUNY, which is a school that Linda Sarsour is slated to speak at. I don't think she's spoken there yet, but they have 4,000 Jewish students. That's 29%. 3 in 10 attendees over there, or 4,000 actually. So 3 in 10 attendees there are Jewish. Then you go to Queens College, which is actually part of the same network, CUNY. It's also 4,000. That's 26%. So we're talking about a network here, okay, that is very tied to the Jews. It actually was once known as the Jewish Harvard, CCNY, the City College of New York. I'll see if they have a figure here for them. Anyway, so CUNY, Bar College, and Hunter College, they're both major colleges in the history of Jewish Americans, okay? And I don't think everybody should care about it, but if you're talking about sensitivity and you're bitching about Betsey DeVos going to a black university when there's never been an incident between Betsey DeVos and anybody that has anything to do with black. She's simply a charter school advocate that became Secretary of Education. People say it's because she's super rich. Well, so what? So what? There's a lot of people that have been in the cabinet because they're super rich. That's not a reason to oppose her. So they made this big stink out of that. And now Linda Sarsour will speak at CUNY. It says here, controversy continued to swirl Monday. This is from May 8th. Around the selection of Palestinian activist Linda Sarsour to speak at the graduation ceremony at the CUNY School of Public Health. As WCBS 880's Peter Haskell reported, it's not that selection of Sarsour is illegal, but Assemblyman Dov Hikind, a Democrat of Brooklyn, thinks it's inappropriate. Hikind feels that Sarsour is anti-Semitic. Bringing her in, you are putting the stamp of approval that this is kosher, he said. Dov Hikind, by the way, is a radical. I mean, he's not the person to ask about this because he's obviously he really is skewed to the other side, and he has a long track record of that. So Hikind pointed to a number of Sarsour's controversial tweets. So you have her tweeting back in October 2015, the definition of courage is a Palestinian kid throwing stones at Israeli soldiers. You know what the courage would have been? For the parents to whisk the kid out of the way. You don't want your kids going and throwing stones at cops. Those are actually police in the background, by the way. If you look at them, they're not the soldiers. They always talk about soldiers. These are police, by the way. Hikind has said that a taxpayer school like CUNY should not have invited Sarsour and should disinvite her. But CUNY said last month that the program for the School of Public Health commencement has not changed. The school said last month that former President Barack Obama named her a champion of change. On Monday, many of Sarsour's supporters said she is a human rights leader who is not anti-Semitic. People have managed to conflate any discussion about Israel that's negative with anti-Semitism, said City Councilman Jermaine Williams, Democrat. Other leaders who are Jewish also spoke out on Sarsour's behalf Monday. Joining the 154 graduates in the commencement will be New York City First Lady Shirley McRae, who will receive an honorary doctorate of science degree. So what this basically means, and I'll go back, let's put this as the background right now. You're going to ignore the background. There's nothing left to show. These colleges, they're fine. They don't care about any objections as long as the objections are about liberals. Okay, those objections to them, you're just being closed-minded. But you bring Betsey DeVos, and suddenly these liberal commentators are like, yeah, they should fucking boo her. She's a rich white bitch, and we're not going to take that kind of shit from her. So they have no problem protesting against that and supporting protests against it. It's the same with the Colin Kaepernick nonsense. If the same thing had been done by somebody who was from let's say northern Florida, hardcore Confederate, was wearing Confederate flags on the sideline, and had done the same type of protest that Kaepernick did, they would have called him to be banned, get the electric chair, as Trump would say. It's frankly, there's asymmetrical balance in terms of freedom of speech between people that are on the conservative side and people that are on this loopy progressive side. And I don't think that it's, the people on the left are also, they're in denial about Linda Sarsour's radicalism. She's the person who she's said that she wants Ayaan Hirsi Ali's vagina removed, even though she knows that Hirsi Ali underwent female genital mutilation. She's called for Sharia law. She's been defending Sharia law as a viable system in America. And quite frankly, I think that it's time for us to renounce this type of double standard here. Okay, and that's why, I think that these commencement ceremonies are complete bullshit anyway. Okay, but if you're going to have this sort of arbitrary rule that people like Betsey DeVos, they offend the sensibilities of the students. Not all the students at, Bethune-Cookman objected to her speaking there. I mean, there were a certain number, if you saw the other video, that were sitting down and weren't really talking at all or yelling. But as for Sarsour, this is a person, she's speaking at a commencement ceremony for a school that it has a massive Jewish population. Okay, it's not a majority. It's not like with Bethune-Cookman, where it's clearly a majority, if not an overwhelmingly black, but it's still a school that is identified historically with the Jewish community and still has a lot of Jews going to it. So anybody who comes back at me and they say, oh, this is just the Jews being very sensitive about it. Well, this has been something that's been going on for decades. It's been, the campuses are the place where the pro-Palestine, anti-Jewish movement started out in the United States. They focused on the campuses first, and we were the canary in the coal mine, the Jewish community. Okay, and that's not, I'm not even including only the Israeli community. I'm saying that the Jewish community as a whole were the canary in the coal mine for this whole liberal skew on college campuses. So in later years, because of this tolerance on the part of university administrators for this poisonous language and this blame game and condemnations and whatnot, because of this, other campus radicals started to really flex their muscles. And we have today college campuses where the business of educating, the business of learning, the business of exploring new viewpoints and expanding your mind is not even secondary in priority. It's way down the list. Everybody now goes to college in order to make some sort of bullshit statement. So I'm going to end this. Leave your comments below. I know a lot of you probably don't like me anyway because, of the whole thing with being part of the tribe. But hear me out. Look, if you're going to have Betsey DeVos get booed, then if Linda Sarsour were to be booed, then you have no right to complain. Anyway, this is Ramon with Bold Like a Leopard. Have a happy Mother's Day and a great rest of your weekend.